And let's give everyone a hand for the introductions. Why are you clapping, you ask? So today we're going to talk about publishing, what publishing is. But before we go more in that level, just a few logistics. Number one is questions. So if you have questions, everyone take out your phone, because this is your phone or your laptop or your tablet or your BlackBerry. So this is going to be the way that we're going to ask questions. We want to put it online so everyone can see. If you go to that website up there, there'll be an interface for you to type in a text question. Yeah, so once you put a question in there, you'll see that other people have also put questions in there. And if you see one that you like, you can vote it up. And the more votes it has, the more likely it will be that that question gets asked and answered. Does that make sense? Everyone got it? Okay. Everyone got it? So everyone online, if you have the link, that's the way to ask questions. So this is going to be a publishing tips and best practice panel. We have 4 individuals from different places and different career points and have had different experiences. And the point of this panel is just to understand how you get your work, get your ideas out there, right? So how do you publish your work? So to start off, I'll just ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll ask another question after that. So again, I want this to be, I'll ask questions here, but it'd be good for you guys to have a conversation, a scholarly conversation between you guys. Okay. And since you have the mic, you can start.
So I'm going to send Kamara.
Oh, yeah.
No? Oh, that's better. All right. So I'm Seny Kamara. I'm a professor at Brown, and I work on cryptography, security, privacy.
Hi, my name is Tim Weninger. I'm a professor at the University of Notre Dame. I work in knowledge discovery and evidence.
Hi everybody, my name is Rumi Ghosh. Perfect. Anyway, so I work in Robert Bosch LLC and I work in data mining.
Everyone should know me by now. Brandy Marshall, Spelman College, associate professor. The work that I do is in information retrieval and social media.
Okay, so Brandy, can you start us off? Can you let us know, hold on to it. How do you get your first paper published?
Oh, and we're streaming live, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So it's okay, so we can be controversial.
So my first paper that I published actually was just me. Sorry if I so what wound up happening is that I had an idea and I knew the process of publishing a paper, which I knew the components because I had read, 50 papers by this point in my graduate career. So I was like, okay, I need an introduction. I need to make sure I have contributions. I need to have a related work. I need to propose something. I need to test that whatever I'm proposing, and I need to, of course, do analysis on it, and I need a conclusion. So I knew the basic framework. So I just did it, and I wound up getting published. So it was completely by myself. Then the actual publication that I guess I count under my advisor was done in collaboration with my advisor, and I got the paper published. And then the camera-ready version, my advisor and co-advisor wanted to change some things and modify some things. So then my hands were kind of off the paper for a little bit, and then it came back to me.
That sounds easy.
It sounds easy, but I wasn't supposed to really publish without my advisor. So if I was doing that, I did.
For me, it was kind of roundabout because I was doing my undergrad in India and I came here as a scholarship student for a summer program. And then my advisor told me, so I was working on pedestrian dynamics or something like that. So it was a little manual because I had to actually count, like I had an Excel sheet where I was counting how people are actually traversing in a museum and then we were building models out of that. But it was an interesting work and it kind of was a foray for me into research, whether I really liked research or not. And it was a joint work with a lot of people and I played a small part in it, but I kind of learned how research works, what are the things you want to put into research, and then it got published in a workshop. And after that, when I came in as a graduate student, then we were working on I was reading a paper and then I had an idea, okay, we could probably change it a little bit and then it would give us better results. And that's what I proposed to my advisor and she liked the idea and then we worked upon the idea. We got some good evaluation and we published it. So that's how I kind of forayed into research.
So I would, with Brandy, I wouldn't publish your first paper on your own. I don't think you would recommend that either.
No.
No, but so I would suggest this is the panel. This is kind of this is a workshop for maybe us to dispense some advice. Is if you want to publish your first paper, if you haven't yet, join part of a team that's working on a project and ask how you can help. And your name will be towards the end of the list. And then as you progress in your PhD school and your program, your name will slowly move its way to the front of that list. So that's how I think my first paper was in 2007. It was published at what it is now, what's it called? It's a social media conference. And yeah, I think number 5 on a list of 7, and then slowly moved up. And the first time I submitted it got rejected. And the second time I submitted it got rejected. And then the third time I finally got accepted. So I think we're gonna talk about that later. But I think a PhD is a 5-year course in dealing with rejection. So keep that in mind. But that's my story.
I would just like to add something to what Tim said. I think it's also good to kind of meet famous people or people who have a lot of publications and work with them because they have some good ideas and they tell you what are the nuances of publishing a paper to get things done.
So I guess my first paper, I was an undergrad, so I just I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I just had some ideas, I talked to the professors, we had a team, and we put a paper together, and it got accepted. But there isn't, I think, much of a lesson in that experience. But I'd say, like, in grad school, I think Tim's advice is very good. Just in the beginning, join a team. That I think is the best way. You're going to learn from the other graduate students, and you're going to learn from the professor, obviously. So I think that's sort of the best way to start. Eventually, I think Rumi's advice is also good. Sort of as you progress, try and work with people, not just your advisor, but other people that are well known and successful. That's how I learned a lot as well. I learned a tremendous amount by working with just experts in different areas. That's actually my favorite way to learn. So I would second that as well.
So you each had some idea behind the paper that you wrote. And so one of the questions that came up is,
I actually
get those
I actually
ideas?
did not have an idea. I joined a team because I wanted to do research. I thought it was kind of a cool thing. I wanted to give it a shot. So I just kind of went and said, hey, tell me what you want me to do. So that's a little different.
Well, that was some of the advice I think Rumi said it as well. Talk with other people who have ideas. So how did you find the other people who had ideas and let you work to be on their paper?
So I went to school at Kansas State University, and at Kansas, go Bobcats. And
Jayhawks.
I'm gonna talk to you later.
They're enemies.
I know.
Sorry.
All right. And so at Kansas State, it's a matter of they had this program where you could do research and get 3 credit hours for it. And so I wanted an easy class, and so I wanted to do some research to get 3 credit hours. And so I just joined the team, and the person who was in charge of that program was a data mining professor, and that's how I became a data mining person. I joined a team, and the team was doing data mining, and data mining is what I grew up doing. That. But your mileage may vary, right? It's different.
I think for me it was slightly different because I came in a fellowship, and so I had the idea of I could choose any professor that I wanted to choose. And what for me, I liked mathematics and I also liked social sciences. So I wanted something that was in between. So I went into social networks and I started doing graph analysis of social networks because I wasn't really sure when I started what I really wanted to do. And that way it kind of gave me a good idea of is this something I really like? If not, where do I want to move into? But I think it's really important to explore right in the beginning. And it's okay if you don't like something, you can try different things. And I think first year should be a year where you kind of look into different things, explore different opportunities, and don't pursue something that you don't like. I think liking something is really important. If you're passionate about it, only then you can move forward. If you're doing it just for the sake of a PhD, it never works. I've seen some of my friends who kind of dropped it midway because they wanted to get a PhD, but they did not really feel passionate about the subject. So, and I think it's always a phase of exploration. I think I'm still exploring. I'm still trying to learn what is new or what do I really like. And I think as long as we have this quest to know or to understand and read a lot, I think that's the way moving forward. At least that has been a good experience for me.
So the original question was all about how do you find collaborators. So I want to talk a little bit about that and give some tips because I didn't really have collaborators. So I did talk with other people in the PhD program, and we started brainstorming ideas like over lunch and over coffee or tea or breaks and things like that. And that was really good in order to get that intellectual mind going before I went into and did my kind of own thing for a while. And then I also was able to use that particular support group in order to help me flesh out ideas with my advisor. So then my advisor and I could then really talk through what actually made sense for us to pursue and what is the direction that we were taking, because I'd already kind of gone through the conversation with some of my colleagues in grad school.
Right. Yeah, I'd say so with respect to the question about ideas. So I think that's really important. Obviously, as you go through your PhD, right, this is going to be important for your master's. And so, in the beginning, kind of, the ideas you get, or the place where you get ideas is other papers, right? Your advisors typically tell you, go read papers from this conference, and then listen to it. And I think that's sort of fine, but that'll really only get you to a certain level, I think. By the time you're ready to graduate, I think you should be able to have your own ideas and come up with your own research agenda. And having good ideas is a skill set, right? It's not like, not everybody has good ideas for research. So you want to make sure that you work on that and you develop that, and you can actively do that, right? You can, like, during the course of your studies, you can sit there and try and pick up good ideas, get feedback from your advisor, from other people, and go back and do this over again, right? And in time, you're actually going to improve your sort of, creativity or your sort of idea generation skill. So I think that's something that's sort of very important. You should actively try to improve. With respect to finding collaborators, I'd say, obviously, there may be people at your school, but maybe you don't have that many people at your school. In that case, you shouldn't be shy, right? So in my situation, I went to grad school at Johns Hopkins, and I was interested in cryptography, but there weren't enough people around me that were interested in this and that worked on this. People at University of Maryland, right? They had a big group there that worked on this and had experts, and I just drove there and showed up at their seminars and listened to the talks and talked to the professor. And eventually, after I kept showing up, right, enough times and talking to him, then we just started working on stuff, right? So if you don't have enough people around you, just don't be shy about it. Go and contact people that are not that far and get collaborators out.
So how do you get a good idea? How do you know when that idea is good? Because some guys said you wrote papers and they're accepted, and you wrote them and they're rejected. Is it because the idea wasn't good enough, or is there a way to evaluate that beforehand?
I mean, I definitely don't look at paper rejection. So some of my best ideas were rejected many times. So it's not correlated, right? it's not necessarily correlated. Actually, there's a ton of famous papers, right, that were completely rejected for like years because people just didn't get what the authors were trying to get at, or it was just way ahead of its time. So, you have to be confident in your own ideas. If you believe in them, just keep working on them. But where you get good ideas, I think it sort of depends on your taste, right? If you have a more engineering mindset, then you want to look at problems that occur in the real world and that haven't been solved, needs that you may have and that aren't fulfilled, right? That's a good way to get ideas. If you're more theoretically inclined, it may be different. It may be an open problem that nobody's been able to solve and you want to solve that. Or maybe that you look at something, there's an area in practice that nobody really understands well, right? Like deep neural nets, or there's a ton of things in cryptography that we don't understand. And if you're theoretically inclined, maybe, figuring out why we don't understand this could be a really good sort of project idea, right? So.
I'd like to add one more thing to that list. I think that's a very good list, but I think the beauty of data science that it is interdisciplinary, and therefore at times you have some ideas. So if you have studied, for example, maths, and you're coming into, say, doing social networks or graph analysis, I can give you my example. I knew that there are some fundamentals in maths which can probably be applied in this field, and it hasn't yet been applied. So these are the kinds. So when you're doing an interdisciplinary research, you can actually take ideas from one field and put it into another field, and that has a lot of visibility, and it also kind of helps you to bring that field forward and kind of be a bridge between the two fields, and that is also how a lot of papers get published in general. For example, if you take machine learning, there are lots of statisticians who have these ideas of statistics, which they bring into machine learning, and that's how those papers get published. So that's also acting a bridge between two disciplines is also a way papers get published.
I actually want to add on to that. I think that's one of the most important things. Is my favorite papers that I read are the ones that take some idea from machine learning and some idea from cryptography and merge them together. My favorite papers that I wrote are ones that take something from, there's a collaboration with people in natural language processing, or formal language, or theory computing, and data mining. Data mining itself is interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, pan-disciplinary, whatever. And we're problem solvers, right? We're a science, sort of, in really the loosest sense of the word. Our job is to take other people's data and help them make sense of it, right? And so the best data scientists are the ones who go out and actively ask for people, so what is your problem? What's keeping you up at night? What are you trying to do? And help them do it. And so if someone in natural language processing is having a problem, mining sentences or whatever, data science might be able to help, or graph mining might be able to help. And those are probably the biggest applications of data science. And if you go to the KDD conference in a couple of days, you'll see good half of the papers are some new learning algorithm for X, or in some discipline. A good half of the papers have that kind of application experimental area.
I have a follow-up concern on the interdisciplinary, but you have lists, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll save it.
Okay, so I just wanted to add to the rest of the panelists here and just say, talk to people. Talk to people from outside of your research group, outside of your institution.
Attend their seminars.
Attend their seminars. You have to talk to people about your ideas. It helps on two fronts. Number one, it helps you articulate the idea and frame it in a way that can be understandable by someone outside of your discipline. And the other part is that then you're able to flush out the idea that you're actually working on, because you're talking about it with someone in real time. Talk to people. The best ideas that I've had always was not just my idea. It was an evolution that happened over time, right? So you might have like, oh, I'm reading this paper and this one little thing is like bugging me. I don't understand why this is necessary. Why did these researchers do it this particular way using this particular equation, this particular algorithm? It to other people, and you figure out why, you figure out what you're missing, and you figure out what else could be done in order to maybe optimize it. That might be useful, and maybe to retool it in a different framework, and expanding your vision and expanding how you were looking at the problem. from different assets. So that's the only thing I really wanted to add is you must talk to people. You cannot be an island unto yourself. You are not a COO or what I call company of one. You must engage other people. We are data scientists in machine learning and everything else dealing with data because we want to engage with people. So break the mold of the computer science myth and actually talk to people. And it's actually a really good thing. You get really interesting perspectives, you get really interesting work coming out of it. Hence why data science is here today, is because people from different disciplines talk to each other, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and all that other stuff.
I just wanted to add something. So I think that's like, really like excellent advice. And I know I didn't always do this, but I'm at a point now where with my projects, like the way I work with people is that like I'll just go to a coffee shop and just talk. Like I don't look for a project. I just talk with people, and I trust that eventually, if we talk long enough, we're gonna come up with something interesting. And this could be with like people from random areas, right? I could talk to like somebody that works on biology or somebody that works like like a legal scholar, right? I don't really care who it is, but I'm pretty certain that if we talk long enough, we're gonna get to something that's like that I haven't thought of before, and that's really, really cool. So I think that's really sort of, really important.
But how long should you stay on an idea or on a project until you move on? And does it do your best? And also a follow up to that, would your best papers come from the ones that you kind of stew on the longest, or do you just have kind of spark ideas that?
It really depends. I think I've had all cases, like stuff that was in the back of my mind for years. Other problems, it took me maybe like 2 years just to formulate the problem correctly because I just couldn't figure out how to formalize it. And other things that just happened very quickly where I knew exactly what we needed to do right away and to have impact, and we did it and got it done. At least that's been nice.
I'd like to add a couple of points to that. Personally, I kind of like to work on 2 or 3 ideas in parallel, because what I've seen is it's not a smooth progress at times. I mean, you're very productive and you have brilliant ideas and you're working, and then there's a dump when nothing comes out. So when you're working on 2 or 3 things in parallel, it really helps because, okay, this is not working out, I can work on something else, I can focus on something else. And it doesn't demotivate you, because if you're just working on one idea and it's not working, it's kind of frustrating, right? Because you're putting in all your life into it. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And I would like to go back into what we were discussing about communications, and I want to bring in a certain different perspective. Basically, there are 2 kinds of people. There are introverts and extroverts. And if you're an extrovert, it's very easy for you to communicate with everybody, talk to people, and so on. But if you're an introvert, and I was very shy in the beginning, for me, it was not so easy to just go into a conversation and talk to people. It wasn't that easy for me. In that scenario, what I would advise is you can actually communicate via emails. If you know somebody, you can send in an email to that person, talk via emails, because I think there are different kinds of personalities, but communication is important, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be something. You don't have to be an extrovert to communicate. You can be an introvert, you can have your own style of communication, but communication is important. Bouncing ideas is important. For example, I used to avoid conflicts. I never liked talking to people who would argue with me all the time, right? I used to be like, okay, you're right, I do not want to disagree with you. But then I realized it's not good, because when your ideas, unless you bounce it, and if it's a person who's a doubting Thomas and you're bouncing your ideas, and then that person can't find any other flaw in your idea, then your idea is really good and it would be acceptable for publication. So these were 2 points I really wanted to bring forward.
To the original question, I think it depends. So the question was, how long should we stick with an idea? And so we're kind of at a publishing tips and practices, right? So if you have a paper written, you can find a home for it. Archive is something that can that happens too. So you could just put something on archive and just be done with it, and wash your hands of the paper and say, okay, you know what, someone else wants to do it, they can. I've done that a handful of times. So I can't get it accepted to KDD. I'll put it on archive or somewhere. But if you haven't written a paper yet and something's just not working, that's why you have an advisor who will kind of tell you, hey, this isn't working out, or maybe we'll be able to put you into contact with people that would know maybe the area better, can help you. And that's why having community and strong advisors are helpful. And that brings to just a brief point I want to make, is that we're here at a data mining conference, right? And well, I do want to, I wouldn't do this morning. How many people, this is the first time at KDD? Fantastic.
All the hands went up. Almost.
Yeah, for the record, 95% of the hands went up. Conferences are, how do I say this? I'm being recorded. The talks at KDD and elsewhere and all the conferences are hit or miss. Some are good, some are bad. They're the least important part of a conference. The most important part of a conference, KDD is no exception, is the coffee breaks. There'll be little tables at the conference, and there'll be people with drinks. Muster courage and introduce yourself and say hi and tell them, did you see the panel on whatever, it doesn't matter. And they'll say no, and you'll say hi, my name is, and then they'll say hi, my name is, and then you'll start talking. So that is the most important part of the conference. Talk to people at the coffee breaks. There's a reason they're a half hour long. Right? It doesn't take a half hour to use the bathroom to get coffee. Right? Half of the conference is that dinner and the coffee breaks. So use that wisely to make connections and be known and form a community of people who you can turn to. And after the conference is over, we come up and say maybe follow with an email. So they have an email kind of in their inbox with hey, I talked to you, I remember you now.
So can you describe how you approach somebody with a new idea? So if you have these really cool interdisciplinary ideas that bring together two concepts, how do you convince someone that it's an interesting idea, and then the communities that may think, oh, this has been done in community A and it's also been, and community B thinks it's been done in community B. How do you negotiate that? Any tips for that?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge. I mean, to start with the second part, which is convincing the communities. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure there's a good answer to that. Realistically, what tends to happen is that one community is going to say, "Well, it's just not that exciting. It's more, for community X, right?" And then you go to them, and then they'll say the same thing, right? So sort of getting everybody excited about the same thing is tough. I think in the long term, people will eventually, if you get it published, people will eventually come around to understanding, contributions you've made to both by linking the two. But it takes work and it takes time. I think it's very rare that you do interdisciplinary work and right away people get it. People are like, oh, this is fantastic. So you should still do it. It's important and it's fun and it's great, but you should have a long-term view about success when you're doing that kind of work. It'll take people some time to come around to it. You also have to, kind of take responsibility for promoting it and for getting out there and getting people to understand it and like it, right? With other work, like when you have like a fixed community, and you're writing a paper that just hits right in the middle of that community, you just publish your paper and everybody's excited and everybody loves it because that's what they know, that's what they do, right? But when you're doing something interdisciplinary, you're not going to have, those people around. So you have to go out there and really kind of make people like it and make people get it.
I completely agree with you, and I would like to add a couple of more points, like things like archive. I think you spoke about archive, one of you spoke about archive. Archive helps, even if you're not getting it published, and don't get discouraged. At times, a lot of people go to archive, and archive helps. Workshops help. If there is an upcoming workshop, publish it in those workshops. And when you're going to a workshop, you have a lot of people who have similar ideas or who think similarly, and that helps in building a community.
So can we take a step back real quick? Does anyone know what archive is? Has anyone used archive? Okay. So can you just describe, not just archive, where are the publishing venues that each of the panelists typically publish?
We can go around and talk to you where we publish. I typically publish in data mining and so KDD and SDM and CIPM and ICDM, these are all these four-letter acronyms that stand for the International Conference on Data Mining or Machine Learning or Knowledge Management or Network Science. And there's all these little communities, we all kind of have these venues. That's a traditional route that you're here at KDD is one of them. Then there's journals you can publish to, and those are run by different organizations. And an archive is actually a project that's been around for a long time, maybe 20 years or so, or longer, out of the University of Cornell. And what the University of Cornell is, you go to ARXIV, .org, maybe?
Just Google it.
Or just Google archive, ARXIV. That's, University of Cornell Libraries has the system where you can publish an e-paper, and it gets indexed by Google Scholar. And there's a low barrier to entry. Like if you publish, just like a shopping list, like they can reject that. But if it's passes like a smell test, like this looks like science, then it's it. And it's not peer reviewed, so you kind of have that. But the acceptance rate is like 95%. But it's open. It's out there now, and everyone can download it for free.
The risk is that some publications will no longer allow you to submit it because now you're unblinding yourself.
Right, and so there are some blind, and that's a good point. There are some places that have blind rules that, like I think NIPS maybe has.
SIGIR. Yes.
ICDM does, right? That's something that we're kind of navigating right now. NIPS, I think the reviewers are said to, you can go and look it up, but you're not supposed to have that affect your opinion, because if you know the author and you don't like the author and all these political things, that is a risk if you put on archive. If you put on archive, I always do it after it's accepted, but before it's published.
Yeah.
Because it's free and open, so long as the journal or the conference allows you to do that. But archive is a venue, an outlet that you can use as kind of for different reasons. And we can talk about that in depth later.
I would also like to add PeerJ. PeerJ is also one of the online, it's a peer-reviewed journal, but I mean, so I would say go into archive if your paper is getting rejected many times and you're frustrated and you just wanted it out of the pipeline, do it. But otherwise, try to publish it in a good conference. Usually, I think if the papers are good and you're getting good reviews, I mean, every time you get a paper rejected, with it comes the reviews from the reviewers for the improvement of the paper. So take those reviews seriously and try to improve your paper. Eventually, if you're persistent, it will get accepted. If the idea is good, I mean, if it's something that's just repetitive, I think novelty is one important factor, and the other important factor is presentation. We often think about novelty, or my paper is novel, so it should get accepted, but presentation is equally important. Whatever ideas you have needs to be conveyed properly. And if that's the scenario, usually I think papers do get accepted. If it doesn't, then go into archive PhD. That's what I wanted to add.
The last thing I would add, because my colleagues covered a lot of material, which was all very good. One thing I would definitely think about when you're writing a paper and thinking about your ideas for papers is what will be the impact of the work that you're doing. Right? I'm very much of an applied type person, but I really want to make sure everyone really gets this, is that what is the impact? When all of you are in some type of program in order to get your advanced degree. At some point, you're going to have to convince people 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the size of your committee. Don't make it more than 5, trust me. You're going to have to convince them that your idea and your experimentation, your research design, and all this was good. And they have to quantify the good. So you have to understand the impact of the work that you're doing. So when it comes to interdisciplinary work, multidisciplinary work, it can be challenging, but if that multidisciplinary community exists, it's a good avenue to pursue when it comes to publishing. If you're trying to create your whole new environment, you have to be very strategic in how you go about it. So you're really not looking for a research advisor, you're really looking for someone to champion your idea that's willing to help you get through the PhD so you can go off and do awesome sauce type things. But at the end of the day, your PhD dissertation, your master's thesis will have some sort of impact. That's kind of the evaluation bar of publishing. And it does include the novelty, the contribution, it does include the presentation, and you explaining what it is that you're doing that is better or is a shift from whatever the paradigm happens to be or whatever the state of art is. So think about that every time you're reading a paper, think about that when you're writing a paper, think about that when you're listening to a presentation. What is the impact? Because 9 times out of 10, when you're sitting down and listening to a presentation, you're most likely going, well, why do I care? That's the exact same thing a reviewer is going to do when they look at your paper. Why do we care? What is the impact of this work? What is the potential impact of the work?
But as a grad student, why do you care to publish? Is it important to, and say I want to go into industry, should I care about publishing as much? It's either master's or PhD.
Since I'm the only industry person, I think I'll answer the question. I think it really depends upon what you want to do with your life. For example, even if you're going into industry, how do you so everybody who is getting into a grad school is good, right? How do you kind of set a bar about what is the kind of person you want to hire in your particular field? Because everybody is good in some field or the other, and a good parameter or a good bar for that are your papers, right? So for example, I'm working, say, in manufacturing and Internet of Things, and I want to hire a data scientist. If I'm hiring a data scientist and I'm just taking interviews are a good paradigm of measuring how people think, but it's not the only thing, because it's not like you want to see how the person, what kind of ideas the person has, how the person communicates, how the person presents those ideas, and all these actually come across in papers. They can be papers, they can be patents. If you're working, so if you want to apply for an industrial job, I think patents are equally important, papers and patents. But you need some kind of say a grading scale to see how good that person is, especially if you're in a research-oriented job, even in industry. And that's where papers come into play.
I would say that in academia, in our industry, papers are the currency. That's the currency right now. Like, we take coffee and create papers. And I did not make it. I stole it from someone else. I apologize. And that's our product. I actually, when I became an assistant professor, I kind of, maybe you'll have the same view, or different. But it's kind of like a little startup. Like I go and I try to find funds. I have my own little cadre of students, and instead of making money, I make papers. That's my product. And so as a grad student, your job, instead of making widgets, you make papers. That's the currency. That's what your job is. That's it from my point of view. I may be controversial, but
I would, so since I come from a different background, I personally feel like I would like to write 2 papers a year, but I want to write good papers which have a lot more citations than writing n number of papers. And so I think I would say that writing something which has substance is important. And I think if you write a good paper, you'll have people talking to you, you'll get more ideas. Papers are important, but I completely agree with you. It's a very aggressive world. It's a very competitive world. The more papers you publish, especially if you are in the field of academia, is important. And that's one of the reasons why I switched to industry, because I felt that is not the kind of competition I want to go into. Because I feel that if I'm doing something, if I want to contribute, I take time to write something, but it has to be something solid. But there are 2 different opinions.
I hope you get a question on quality and quantity.
Yeah.
It's an important question.
Yeah.
We do have that question, and I'll let you guys get into it.
Yeah, I just want to add something. So I'd say, like, with papers, I mean, obviously, if your plan is to go into academia, right, or even an industry research lab, clearly papers are important, so I won't really talk about that. But I think even sort of if you plan on going into industry, I mean, if you do get, say, your PhD or your master's, if you can publish, I think, it will be helpful, because, like, when you publish something on some topic, right, I mean, you're like one of the leading experts on that topic and on that subject, right? Especially whatever you publish. And so it gives you this kind of like, it gives a proof that really, like, you're one of the top people on this subject. And for the specific thing that you publish, nobody knows it better than you, right? Clearly nobody knows your own results better than you do. And I guess that has value, like beyond just academia, right? Now, it may not matter as much. You may not need like 10, 20 papers to make this point, but a few, I think, will help you even in industry, right? Especially if there's a company, a startup, or something that needs that specific type of expertise. Right?
Exactly. I would just like to add on to it, like, so when you are in an industry, and especially if you're in research lab, one of the parameters by which you're judged is how well known you are in your community. And the best way of showing that you are well known is showing that you have a lot of papers. People know you are a part of conference. So I couldn't agree more.
Would you be willing to give a number to what's expected, the number of publications that's expected for your grad students, or
grad students.
or grad students you may advise?
So actually, just like got to Brown. Like I started a few weeks ago, so I don't have any grad students yet. I was in an industry research lab. I was on Microsoft Research before for 8 years, but so I don't really have a set number yet. But I mean, I don't think I would have a number in any case. I mean, one thing I have seen is that I think the expectation numbers of papers has gone up tremendously. Like it just keeps going up and up, and it's kind of insane. Like at least in my own area, it's just the students now come out with like some crazy amount of papers, and it's not like I don't really feel like the quality is like going up tremendously. It's just the numbers, right? And so this is something actually that I think is a bit that I'm concerned with. And I don't know whether I mean, like I guess one person had an interesting idea. They said that basically when we interview people, we should only look at their top 3 papers. Like they should say, these are my top papers, and we should only focus on that. That way it relieves pressure from everybody else to have to compete and publish 15 things before they graduate. But that's kind of a separate discussion.
So I had 5 and I have 4. I had a PhD student graduate, and how was it? I didn't require, like, I pushed for 1 paper per term. But at the same time, like, if they could do 2 papers, cool. If they could only do 1 in a year, okay, that's fine. But that's the general rule. Now, I would say that starting off, I remember kind of when I was just starting off, I would look at some PhD students that, maybe my other folks in my lab that are more senior, or new assistant professors who you want to kind of get their job or whatever. And you might see a litany of publications. Don't worry about other people's publications, insofar as the number or where they're published and so on. That's irrelevant to your research. So do the best work you can, and write it up in the best way that you can, and be happy with the work that you do yourself. Saying that Johnny has 15, I only have 10, I really don't care. I really don't like measuring how good we are in the number of papers that we publish. I think some of the best researchers that I know only publish 3 or 4 papers a year. Don't worry about counting papers. Do good work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say was do good work. That's my mantra. All right, so that's kind of one of my mantras is just do good work. Heard it from somebody else, but just do good stuff. So when I had master's students, I always tried to make sure that they at least had 1 publication by the time they left, by the time I graduated. And that was because I wanted the students to spend 1 semester understanding the difference between undergraduate and grad school. So I did not push a publication that very first semester. I said, you get used to grad school and understand the difference between undergrad and grad. Because if you don't understand the difference in your first semester, then the rest of the time is going to be hellish for me. So you understand that, and then we can start on research. The other thing I wanted to add was when it comes to publishing, it's always about quality for me, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with that as well, is that I wanted to make sure that I had solid work. So I did not want my students to, just to publish something somewhere that might be predictorial or not. I would much rather have them receive a rejection and see what is the comments of the reviewers and us to work on that paper again versus just publishing something that was easy to get into. So it's just very important to really consider where are you publishing, and you don't have to publish at the top tier conferences. So if you're all are new to KDD, this is a great experience to get an idea of what is the quality of papers for KDD. But understand that the acceptance rate is, 12%?
Less than 20%.
12% or something like that. So understand that if you apply for submit to KDD, the likelihood of you being accepted is whatever the acceptance rate is. So maybe you want to look at workshops. There might be have a little bit higher acceptance rate. That might be a good entree. So definitely look at stepping into publications. Look at workshops that are very focused, then moving up to a main conference. So you can take your time to get the publications, but make sure that they are quality at each level that you go and pursue.
But it's also really important to make sure that your advisor is going to fund you to go to whatever thing you're getting accepted, because I don't know about other places, but I just want to mention it in conjunction with that comment, because our lab has policies about travel compared, like for workshops compared to travel for top tier or even mid-tier conferences, and other people might not be aware of it. I just want to throw that out there
Yeah.
because.
I'll go ahead and say it on the mic. So, in the audience, what was mentioned was making sure that there is funding for you to attend the conference if you do get accepted. And that is a big need for not only the student population, but also the faculty population, because faculty costs more to go to conferences. So make sure that you get that clear with your advisor of what happens if we get accepted. Will I be able to attend the conference? Is there money to attend? And there's many different pots of money available. Not only your professor might have some through research grants, but there might be also funding available at your institutions to support graduate students in order to go and present papers. And then thirdly, as KDV has done for many years, is that they also have student travel. So if a student does have a paper published, they will have an opportunity to apply and also get travel funds taken care of. But you have to really understand what is the options for you once you get funded. I mean, once you get accepted.
Yeah, just to add quickly to that. So with respect to numbers of papers, I think it goes back to what you were saying, is that what really matters is impact. So in a large number of papers, I mean, it's not going to hurt you, right, if you have a lot of papers, but if the quality goes down, then it will hurt you, right? So you want to sort of shoot for having impact, and you want to make sure that you're known for something, right? When you get on the job market, basically, right, people have to know who you are and why they should care about your work. What have you done, and like what impact you had. If they've never heard of you, it's going to be very difficult to get an interview at that place, right? So that's kind of the key thing is really just kind of the impact of your work. And then large number of papers is like a secondary consideration. Now, some people get known because they publish a lot. That's what they're known for. It's not like nobody really reads their papers, but it's just everybody is just like astounded by the number of papers they produce, right? So that's a strategy, but it's not the best strategy.
I want to add one brief thing is that if you publish a paper or a series of papers on a topic, and you come to KDV in a couple of years, and you introduce yourself to someone and says, "Oh, you're the one who does X," then you get tenure. That's being known for, "Oh, you do that," and that's your topic, and you're known to someone who you just met. That's gold. That's what you got to shoot for. So if you publish in biology, chemistry, and physics, and you publish in good work, but you're not known for being that person who does something, then I would prefer to be that person rather than have shotgun approach.
I would like to address the question that we had from the audience. I think getting a paper published is the most difficult hurdle if you're facing problems with grants, for example. Almost all good conferences have travel grants. And apart from that, Women in Science and Engineering, WISE also has a lot of travel grants. So keep a lookout for the travel grants. NSF has travel grants. So keep a lookout for the travel grants. I think that barrier can be not easily, but...
Yeah, I'm not saying I have a problem.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, in certain places, for example, in my lab, there's different policies for workshops compared to main conference acceptance. And so if you have to travel internationally, that might not be so easy to approve for a workshop that's like easy acceptance rate. That's why I mention it, not for my own sake, but for other people's sake.
That's a good point.
I mean, with that, if your advisor is going to pay for your travel, they should probably be a co-author on the paper, I would imagine, maybe. And if they're a co-author on the paper, that means they know about the paper. And they wouldn't let you submit somewhere that they're not going to pay for. So that's kind of a circular logic of stay in the loop of your advisor. And your advisor's not going to say submit to the workshop in Barcelona if he or she can't support you. So your advisor's going to be on top of that.
So from what you've seen in industry, are there any barriers to publishing your work or compared to academia?
Yeah, I think there are more barriers in the industry than academia, especially if the work is proprietary. And I think it's a trade secret and you can't publish it that well. But then you have these norms and you can always, for example, before I joined my company, I wanted to be clear about what were the publication protocols, because I wanted to join a place where I could do publications. So as long as you're clear of what you can publish and what you can't publish, and you're comfortable with it, I think industry is a good option. But that doesn't mean that yes, you can publish everything. There are lots of proprietary stuff that you can't publish. Then you have to decide whether it's a trade secret, whether it's a patent, whether it's a paper. So there are these things that you have to take into consideration. But as long as you're clear about it, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I'd say like the thing about industry, at least industry research labs, that they're all very, very different, right? And so that's something you have to really pay attention to. Like, you know, there's a certain model at Google, there's a different model at Facebook Research, there's another model at Microsoft Research, and they're really kind of incomparable. The cultures are different. So once you sort of get a sense for what the culture is, right, then I think you can sort of navigate that. But you shouldn't be naive to like you expect that everything is going to work just like it did when you were in grad school. It really depends. Like, I mean, at MSR where I was, it wasn't an issue. Publishing was perfectly fine, no issue whatsoever. We were expected to publish. We were like encouraged to publish, and actually that's how we got reviewed, right? So we had to have impact. It was sort of like a computer science department at a university for the most part. I mean, of course, if you worked on something with a product group, right, specifically, then you know we were expected to sort of consult with them whether what we can or can't, you know, state publicly. But that was like extremely rare. So, but again, it really depends on the culture of the place.
As long as you're clear about what the protocols are, but it's good to have those protocols clear before you go and join an industry. Even for an internship, like if you're interning in a particular company, for example, it's good to kind of ask your advisor, the person you're interviewing with, what are the publication policies. For example, the interns that we take in, we typically like to have a publication at the end if the person is doing some work that has some kind of impact. So be clear about it, ask the right questions right in the beginning. It helps you to set the plate clear and understand what is coming next.
So if tenure, part of tenure is becoming famous in one area, does blogging play a role in that? Do you think people should blog as grad students or as academics or industry?
So, I'd say so. I like have a blog and like, but I haven't updated it. I don't know how long. But I think I think about it maybe a little bit differently, right? Like some people I think of it as like a way to entertain other people, right? So they feel responsible for writing something every week so that people will like it and all this stuff. I don't really think of it that way. I think of it as just a place where I just write up certain things that aren't, you know, sort of research level, but are like, you know, just like high level, right? That's really it. So it's just another form of writing, right? You don't have to sort of publish something all the time on it. I think with that perspective, you know, this is how I think about it. I think it has some advantages, or sort of what I liked about it is that, especially when I was in industry, because I didn't teach, it allowed me to really, so like one of the sort of benefits of teaching, right, is that it forces you to really understand the material, right, well enough that you can explain it to somebody else. And when you're in industry, you don't get that as much, right? And so it's harder to learn new things. I feel like it's harder to really sort of get down to the fundamentals of things. And so like writing up like short or quick articles on certain topics allowed me to learn new things and to like deepen my thinking. So so I would recommend it just you know, just for that. And there's a ton of research ideas I got from just writing a blog post, right? Like a ton. So yeah, so I would definitely recommend. Not necessarily for, you know, visibility, just for your own kind of thinking, you know,
So I wanted to talk a little bit about tenure promotion because I guess I'm the tenure person on the panel. So academia is shifting the way they're thinking about online blogging, vlogging, and interactions with social media. It is slow to change. It's academia. Runs at the rate of government, which is slow too. So what happens is that if you make a case for your impact, I keep going to impact, goes to your impact of how your blog or vlog is reaching and disseminating to different people, then it could be a very important piece in a promotion and tenure package, but it's a matter of being very clear upfront if that is a possibility at the institution. So institutions are talking about it, It tends to be more in the humanities and social sciences, but I believe that the sciences are right behind, the physical sciences are right behind that trend, and trying to understand how do you make science accessible to people, and sometimes that does come in the framework of blogs and vlogs and interactions in social networks. So it's not quite at the level of being on the promotion and tenure docket as you must do or should do, but it definitely is something that can be negotiated and can be important. Not only to just share your thoughts and just like Seny said, just sharing what you're going through and helping you get through ideas, but it also is a way for you to connect with people, not only your research community, but also your students. So I know a number of faculty that use Twitter and Facebook in order to engage with their students in different ways outside the classroom. Sometimes they host office hours via Twitter or via Facebook instead of looking at the course management systems. So if you have a very innovative way of connecting with students and engaging with students, that's very important. If you have also used those same platforms to move forward your scholarly and intellectual communities, it also is a good place to do it as well. It's not peer reviewed, and that's what the discussion is really about, is how to evaluate the quality of any type of blogging types of activities.
I would actually maybe think of, at risk of being provocative, I don't think blogging matters a whole lot in my mind. Have I read the computer science research blog?
Has anyone else read it?
I don't know that I do regularly. I at least not data mining. I guess I go to Katie Nuggets every so often and maybe some of the stuff they have there, but it's some of the blogging against it. I don't think it's actually all that necessary, or at least for me. In my tenure case, I think if I were to do it regularly, my department would say, "Hey, stop." I would rather you get another grant or another paper. At least it's at Notre Dame, it's not that highly, but at different universities might have different standards and different perspectives. But in my mind, I'm if you want to, great, but I'm not all that excited about the blogging about the science. Someone should do it. We should have science writers and people who do it. But I mean, if we all did it, then that's a lot of talking about the same stuff. So that's just my point of view, my perspective.
So Rumi wants to say something, but I want to say something before she says something. So there's different types of institutions. So I want to make sure that those that are here and those that are listening in understand the different institutions. So I'm at Spelman College, which is a liberal arts undergraduate only teaching institution. So the type of institution that you might go to if you were to pursue academia could dictate, the answer. So Tim's answer for Notre Dame would work for Notre Dame, but I'm at a liberal arts institution where 2/3 of the graduates are coming from humanities or social science. So as a computer scientist, I'm always looking for the applied connections and applications. So you just think through what type of institution you might be looking at. So if it's teaching, if it's undergrad only, if it's liberal arts, if it's research one, very different types of institutions will want and accept or be interested in different things. So really look at those interests. As industries are very different, so are institutions. So just be very cognizant of that. And now I'm gonna give it over to Rumi since she did want the mic.
So at the risk of sounding idealistic, because I can say for sure in industry, blogging does not matter. But I say if you like to blog, why not? If you're spreading your ideas, please do. But if you don't like to blog and you're blogging just because you want to get a tenure, that's probably not the right reason.
Yes, I agree completely.
Yeah, so this, actually, I was gonna just say something similar, which is that it really shouldn't have anything to do with tenure, right? It has nothing to do with tenure. If you think you're gonna get tenure by writing a blog, that's just kind of insane. That's never gonna happen. I don't think that's sort of the point, right, either. So you shouldn't, there's a lot of things you should do, that you may like to do or may be useful for you, for your own thought process, that have nothing to do with tenure, right? Not everything you do should be about, am I gonna get tenure at the end of this, right? So if it's sort of part of, if it helps your process in getting ideas, if it helps your process in thinking, right? If it helps you build a community around, especially if you're doing interdisciplinary work, right? where it's more challenging to find, sort of an established community, yeah, then do it. It's great, right? But definitely don't have any expectations in terms of what you're gonna get out of it. That's not really it. I don't think that's really the point.
So we're getting a lot of questions about this one topic, and I want to put it in the correct format. So with blogging, there's comments. Sometimes there's comments enabled, and sometimes they're not. And so people say, don't read the comments, right? But when you submit a paper to a journal or a conference, you get reviews, and those are like the comments for your paper as well. And also, so if you go on a cruise or you go on a flight, they tell you what to do in case of emergency, just so that if an emergency happens, you're prepared. So I'd like you guys to say, if there's an emergency, like your paper gets rejected, how should you prepare yourself to handle the rejection? Is there a formulaic thing you go through to kind of take a rejection?
Let's start that.
So rejection is going to be part of it. I told you this already. I was rejected this morning once. Nips. And yeah, it's just, like the first time I got rejected, yeah, it hurts, it stings. But like I think the first time I got rejected twice. It's my first paper, and then it went, and we didn't actually change a whole lot, and then I actually got to a better venue. One thing that I think I always say, if someone doesn't like it, well, it's their problem, or they just understand or something, I'll kind of deflect it onto the reviewers. And now that I am a reviewer, I kind of get it, because when I sit down with a stack of papers, I get like 10 for KDD or something. And I got to read those, and I have to admit, like, there are times where I'm just not feeling the reviewing process, and I'll admit to giving no. I just didn't put my best heart into this review, and maybe I didn't understand, didn't put enough effort into it. And being on the other side of the reviewing, I kind of get how good papers get rejected all the time. All the time, good papers get rejected. It's really a random stochastic process. Now, most of the time, good papers get accepted. The accepted papers are good, but good papers get rejected. Usually, almost always, bad papers get rejected. Almost always. And so it is fair to deflect to the reviewer, or just to say, hey, no, that comment or those comments, that you clearly didn't read the paper. And you can just kind of just let that one go and try again. I've had, in my lab, I've had twice has happened, not to me, but to my lab mates, where when I was a PhD student, where the paper was rejected from KDD and was the best paper at the next KDD.
Well-known
It
phenomenon.
happens more often than I can. There was a paper, I don't want to tip the hand too much, but it got 3 accepts from 3 different reviewers and was rejected. So it's not a perfect process. It is the best process we know, but it's not perfect.
So I go through a personal process when I get rejection. I first look at the little snippet window to see whether or not it's a congratulations or that I read to inform you. You know what I mean? You just look at the email, you just kind of, you don't really open it, it's still unread, you just kind of look. So I do that and I go, oh, okay, it's a reject. Okay, I'm not gonna look at that right now. But then I go through and just flag it. So I know that it's unread, but yet I flagged it so I can refine it. But I don't want to see it all right now. So then so I go, I'm very detailed in this process because yes, this is what I do. And so then after about a day or two, depending on how upset I am, I then will go back folder and actually read it. And then I'll go through what Tim goes through, which is, oh, they didn't understand the page. They're just morons, right? So I go through that, denial process. And then after about a week, then I look at it a third time and go, okay, I think I'm ready to actually hear what they have to say. Because I have to be in the right frame of mind to hear what they have to say. I have to let it rub off a little bit because I do put a lot into the papers that I write or write with students. So after that week, I will then look and then I will actually start doing almost like my own little mini analysis and figuring out, okay, what was positive, what was negative, what do I need to beef up? Is it the related works? Was it the reframing? Was it the narrative? Was it the experiments? Was it the data sets? And I start going through making all the twists and turns. And then I decide whether or not I'm going to put forth the effort to do a resubmit or find another venue, and if so, what venue. So I go through a very detailed process in order to deal with rejection, because I'm not very good at it. I'm a type A personality, so.
I think I would agree with you, but I don't have such a detailed process. For me, it's almost like, okay, it's a rejection, but I save some time so that I have like 3 or 4 hours in time. I go through it, I analyze it, and I see if there's a scope of improvement. And also, I would like to reiterate the point that the rejected paper doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad paper. There might be scenarios where the reviewers haven't reviewed it properly. And if they haven't, then you can always send it to some other conference, and there's a high probability of it getting accepted. And the other thing I want to say is, I like reviews, even in a rejected paper, if it's a detailed review, it's helpful. I hate the rejections where there's like a no, but there's no reason why it's a no. So I think it also depends, and therefore I like submitting to good conferences, because usually, most often, the reviews are at least more detailed, so you have an idea of why things are being rejected. And also, like, you usually, if you have some serious queries and you think, okay, this is not right, you can always write back to the conference chairs or somebody in the conference, the program committee, and ask them, like, why was the thing, like, this is what I feel, or this is not right. You can always ask them, like, this is how it was rejected. And usually, I think they're not monsters out there, they're people, and so they'll come back to you, they'll answer your question.
I'd say, like, at least with me over time, like, things have changed. So when I was a student, I used to take it like really personally and be like crushed and just like thinking it was the end of the world, and people got rejected, and what does this mean about, you know, my research abilities, blah, 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 right? Now I'm at a point where I just really don't care. It's like, you know, I'm like a lot more confident, you know, the papers I write. I know whether it's a good idea or, you know, an average idea. And if the reviewers don't get it, then they don't get it. And, you know, like most of the time I feel like, you know, they're wrong. So, you know, your kind of how you sort of deal with this will evolve, like, you know, as you get sort of more senior and more experienced. But I think that, you know, the key point is that you definitely shouldn't take it personally, and definitely shouldn't think of it. You know, like, this is a business where you're gonna get rejected all the time for like so many different reasons. And, you know, you definitely have to sort of understand that it doesn't always reflect on your work or on you. That's like a key, I think, you know, sort of a key thing to know.
So with the last couple minutes, I know there's a lot of questions that are kind of mid-review, nothing votes. If anyone has any burning questions, let's ask them, and maybe one or two or one panelist can answer it. Say it again?
How much time do we have?
We have 10 minutes. So any questions? Go ahead, Sharon. And I'll repeat the question after that's it, or the panelist.
What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in publishing?
The question,
and why?
The question is, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made in publishing, and why did you make that mistake?
No,
Or
why was
was
it the worst?
I'm just kidding.
Why
was it the worst?
The worst mistake I made, it's quickly resolved, is that I submitted to, I forget exactly, I submitted to conference A, and my students submitted to conference B at the same time. And that went through for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then we kind of we both talked about it, and he said the conference acronym for A, and I'm like, wait, what conference? And so we dual submitted. It was about 3 or 4 emails to the program committee saying, hey, I'm way sorry. We picked one. We didn't tell one conference. We told one we didn't want to submit to, and we retracted it. But don't submit to 2 conferences at the same time, or journals, or venues in general. Don't do that. Luckily, we were apologetic and we were honest. And but if you do that, it's kind of paper fraud. You don't want to do that. It's unethical. So.
That's a good one.
So it was more like the conference had a 9-page submission. The next year they changed. No, it was a 10-page submission on the first year. Next year they changed it to a 9-page submission, and we did not see through it, and we had a 10-page paper, and that was like the worst thing ever. So please read through the instructions carefully. I mean, when it's a theoretical mistake, things can be improved, but these are stupid mistakes that should be avoided in all class.
Oh, I just want to ask you about sort of the increasing cost of open access journals and how you are negotiating, you know, that portion of your grant that appears, I mean, at least for, I mean, in genetics, increasingly my grant writing is toward paying really expensive publishing costs, in quality high impact journals, and so you want the high impact journal for your career, but at 5,000 a pop.
So let me try and summarize the question. So some publications at top journals, depending on your field, cost money to submit. It costs money to submit to. So there's this trade-off between submitting to these top expensive journals or to a lesser or an open one that's free, but maybe not as prestigious. So how do you decide which one you should submit to?
So I run into this problem, I think, frequently. I don't know the genetics area, but in the AC Metropole, there's open access options where you can make it open access, and it's like $4,000, something silly. But there's also the option that's free, but then they will charge the libraries or whatever. It's behind a paywall. And invariably, I will ask the journal editor if I can post to archive, and they'll say, fine with me, fine with the journal. And so if the editor says it's okay, I don't bother with anything else. It goes on archive and it goes behind a paywall. And I don't pay that fee. It's not my grants, and I just don't pay it. So it's open access because it's on archive. It's free to download. It shows up in the whatever JSTOR. If they can't get to it because it's behind a paywall, they just Google it and it's on archive. I hope no one else here is listening. But that's what I think that whole industry is changing rapidly. I don't know what it's going to turn into, but that's my current workaround.
Can I just say one other thing? When you have a friend of mine is at Nature of Communications, and so what she was saying is that there are reviewer comments that you can see, and there's reviewer comments that you never get to see, right? That are confidential. And so she said that that's one of the things that's difficult to thread the needle, because sometimes people will be like, yeah, this paper's okay, it shouldn't be rejected, and then in their kind of confidential comments, they're like, sink this shit, and then they send that to, whatever. So I just wanted to say that,
That's
happens. I know, it is a terrible review, but it happens all the time for political reasons, right? So, I mean, you can trace back who wrote the paper, but you can also trace back who wrote the paper.
Especially if they cite my work.
That's cite my paper.
So the comment was that sometimes when you get reviews back, the reviews are supposed to be double blind, which means the reviewer doesn't know who's writing the paper and the paper writer doesn't know who's doing the review. And within the reviews, the reviewer can send messages to the author, but also to the program chair, the person managing it, to the editor. So sometimes they'll say unfair comments to the editor, but kind comments to the reviewer, to the paper. To the paper author, submitter. That's what it is.
The consensus of those two are not the same, so you can get some mild comments, but I think it'll be like that.
So they'll go easy on you, but really they have a harsh criticism to the editor. That was the comment.
I think that holds for even conference. I don't know about the genetics community, but that holds for conferences in computer science also. And I have reviews for Nature, and even in Nature, you have the same comments. You have the confidential comments. You really can't do anything about it. That's my simple answer. Just take it as a face value. I don't know if you guys have a
Well, the program chair should, or the editor should see that, and they take that into account next time they want to use a reviewer, I would assume.
And the editor can say, please rewrite your review. They can reject it.
There's ever increasing ridiculous amount of public data, especially now with the government's open data initiative and things like Kaggle competitions, etc. Is there a good way to use that and take initiative on that to turn it into publication and into good impactful research?
I would like to answer that question because,
Just to repeat for the
okay,
viewers at home. So there's a lot of open data. The government has an open data initiative on data.gov and CAB competitions where people publish open data. How do you turn those data sets that are free to publications? Is there a way to do that?
so I think a lot of these conferences have data challenges nowadays, and most of these data challenges are in Kaggle. And once you win a data challenge, I think it's a sure shot into the publication world because most of these data challenges are published. And for example, even we are working on a data set for manufacturing, and we're making it open source, and we are putting it in Kaggle. And at the same time, we're attaching a data challenge associated with it. So I think participation in data challenges is really cool. I think I know a couple of people who got tenures, and one of their things in their CV was they had won 4 or 5 data challenges in KDD. So I think that's something which is less revered, error prone because it's more objective. If you're winning a data challenge, you're winning it.
So I guess this might be a weird question. I don't know. I'm in industry, and I've gone the research route for a while. My day-to-day involves a lot of open source projects. So whether I'm building open source projects or utilizing open source projects, and I think in the research community, I don't necessarily want to say there's a lack of the open source contributions and a lot of the research that's put out unless it's complete. So I'm wondering if any of you in the publishing process have ever thought of open sourcing your work as you're working on your project, and what value would you gain from outside contributors influencing the direction of which your project is going, almost like a real-time collaboration for publishing work that you're doing. That might sound like a really weird question. I don't know.
So the question was, for people, especially people working on software, you can do your work in the open. You can, while you're building your product or writing your paper, you can do it in the open, which may allow people from outside your institution to contribute. And so have you, I guess the question is, have you opened up your work while you're developing it to get feedback before publishing?
So I would say you could do that. I think it's kind of dangerous to do because someone who's contributing could also write a paper, right? And then KDD can't publish the same work twice. So that might be a little risky. I have not done that. I guess if you want to do that, you can. I'm not against it. I will say though that a lot of the conferences nowadays reviewing panel has a box that says, "Is data and code available?" And that counts like +10 to the overall score. In almost all, if not every single one of my papers, there is a GitHub link and a link to the data. I think it's almost as important as the idea. Reproducible science is critical. We don't have much of a problem in data science because the program compiles and works or it doesn't. But in a lot of fields, reproducing the results is kind of not always true. So it's critical that you open source, or at least have your scripts and analysis really an open book. So you should definitely do that, unless you're forbidden for industry or something for doing that. But I think it's extremely important. But as far as open sourcing the development, I don't know if I wouldn't do that, but.
I think I would agree with him because if you're publishing papers, novelty is an aspect, and if you're kind of open sourcing it right in the beginning, somebody else might copy your idea. So usually people do it, but there's no hard and fast rule that you can't do.
I think we have time for one more learning question.
All right, me again, but only because nobody else wanted to. So if we go back to the multidisciplinary discussion that we had earlier, one concern that I've heard floated by various people is when you're doing multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary work, you often have a problem in both sides of the disciplines. like one of them you can't publish because it's not considered novel enough, you're only applying existing methods, and the other one is sort of not your field, so you don't know how to write the papers properly because it's not your community, and it also won't help your tenure case or whatever, your publication record to publish in some social science journal. And so I'm curious, for those of you who do publish multidisciplinary work, how do you deal with that, or do you even care about these concerns? How do you handle those types of issues?
I would like to answer that because my PhD was interdisciplinary, and I would say it's like seeing the glass half full or half empty, right? So I can give you my example. So I did graph-based analysis of social networks. So I have published in physics journals, I've published in mathematics journals, I've published in sociology journals, computer science journals. So I think it's an advantage because you can actually publish in different fields. Of course, there is this aspect of novelty, but I think if you read the journals, you'll know what they are wanting from you, and everybody has a call of paper that's slightly different. And if you cater to their particular call of papers, I think if you are catering to what they require, I have been lucky that my papers have been accepted, but I think that is the golden recipe, if I could say. But of course, there are rejections. It's not that everything is accepted.
And I'd say, like, I mean, this is kind of what I was saying earlier, but that short term, you may have some difficulties, but long term, I think people will come around. So if you can kind of survive long enough to reap the benefits of that, then, you know, I think it's definitely worth doing. Another thing, if you can, you know, pull this off in your interdisciplinary research, is if you can leverage kind of techniques or ideas from one area to really do something that nobody else in this other area can do, that's a sort of an easy way to make sure that people in this area will actually pay attention and, you know, sort of reward you for that impact. But you have to sort of find the right problem where, you know, that sort of can be solved using ideas and methods from, you know, like standard ideas and methods. And then, so that's a bit sort of more rare, but if you can pull that off, that's fantastic.
I wanted to just add one. I like where you were going with that. And with the interdisciplinary kind of question, I think that it's interdisciplinary, and we're all kind of asking questions to like kind of how to play the game, right? So there's kind of this game of publishing, I think, and you're asking us because we've played this game for a long time, so we know all the tips and tricks. But I think the only one you really have to be, the one thing you have to do is just good science. So you do the good science, papers will publish themselves. You write it up, you submit it, it gets published. If it is rejected, be diligent, work hard. But in the end, the only person you really have to convince is yourself. And so if you think that you're doing good science, do good science, and the rest just kind of falls into place. Papers get kind of published, but really just strive, work hard, and do your best, and be happy with the work that you're doing. Right? So I think that's kind of, publishing is important, but doing the good science is more important.
That's true, right? But I think there are extra challenges when you're doing interdisciplinary work that go beyond, like, you know, so obviously you want to do good science, I mean, I definitely agree, right? Clearly. But I think when you are doing disciplinary work, there's sort of these extra challenges that people who do, like, kind of more mainstream in their area don't have to deal with. So even if you are doing good science, you still have to sort of deal with that.
And then you may not end up having like a concrete community that you can go to that knows you. Just like you said, oh, if people know that you do this, you'll get tenure. But you don't. If you don't have that community, you have a harder time.
And that's a huge challenge, right? So that's what I was saying earlier. Kind of, when you do this kind of work, you also have to take it upon you. You're just responsible for it. You have to sort of build that community. If it doesn't exist already, you really have to kind of like create it from scratch, and you're responsible for promoting that work and getting people excited. And it's really hard, especially as a student, right? Like, you don't imagine that you have to do this kind of thing, but it's sort of like you may have to, you know.
If you don't promote yourself, no one else will.
Yeah, or at least promote this interdisciplinary kind of field and area, right? So that's sort of.
Would the panelists like any final thoughts?
I would just like to add to that very good question, and I'd say the good part of it is you'll have one of the first papers out there, and you'll have the maximum number of citations once you have it.
And sorry, just
crossing fingers
again.
for that one.
And there's certain things you can do. For example, like, you know, I got interested in like surveillance right after the Snowden revelations, and like So one thing I did is I just started a workshop on like surveillance and technology. It's very small. It's not like, sort of high status, top tier, but sort of I was interested in it. And it turns out there was, a handful of other people that were really excited about this, right? And wanted to attend the workshop and are asking me to do it again. So you can also do things like that to kind of help create a community around what you're interested in. And you'll find that there's like people in random other communities that are really excited about it, and you can kind of band together and like make progress that way.
You guys have to remember that KDD wasn't interdisciplinary between statistics and databases. KDD was the KDD workshop at Sigma some 20 years ago, right? So these things happen, and that's the nature of kind of the discipline and what we do. And that's one of the most exciting things, is to see conferences come and go. But I just want to remind you that KDD was itself interdisciplinary at the time and was a workshop, just like you said.
And Dr. Marshall, would you like to have any final words?
I've let everyone else talk because I was enjoying the conversation. I guess the final thoughts that I have is ask questions. So the questions you've asked have all been great. Continue to ask questions while you're here and throughout KDD. Continue to build community, continue to talk to each other and meet new people and talk about what is your research endeavors and what is your pipe dreams, because dreams do come true, even though I know that's cliche. So continue to persist and pursue, stay motivated in what you want to do in your life and in your career, however that might meander. Be open to the evolution of whatever your career path might be. Right? Even though you all are now in the graduate school, it might meander to something else that you might not even know. It might be entrepreneurship, it might be business, it might be industry, it might be academia.
So let's give the panel a hand.
All right, time to take a break. A bathroom break, a drink break, a snack break, whatever break. It looks like we've got maybe 25 minutes or so. Let's be back here at 3:30. And then we'll do some more mentoring stuff.